welcome to GTFO Live. We are members of the Golden Triangle Freethinkers organization. I'm Jerry Mandarin. Over here, we have Vic Demented.
Yo.
Pull himself up on camera. There he is right there.
Hey.
Who's your buddy, Vic?
Jake, the dog.
Jake the dog. We have Will Young across from him in the red shirt, paying homage to Chick-fil-A. And for those of you at home that can read that. And our guest today is eccentric biblical blogger. That's hard to say. That's really hard to say, biblical blogger.
Biblio blogger.
Biblio blogger. And we're going to have some fun discussion on biblical history. Because that always leads to fun discussions. I don't know, when I go to parties. That's what we discuss.
That's something you definitely want to talk about.
Yeah.
Hoorah.
He gets you the chicks.
Because one of the things we wanted to discuss today, I guess since we have eccentric here, is the historicity of Jesus and why that is a complicated, touchy subject amongst both Christians and non-Christians and secularists alike.
I found anytime you start talking about Jesus, things get a little touchy.
They do. They do.
And some people get a little touchy.
Especially in the Catholic Church.
Yeah.
Touchy-feely. Yeah, exactly.
If you know where I'm going with that. What? But
it is only reality.
sorry. But we want to talk today about historicity of Jesus. Why? Well, let's eccentric. Let's go ahead and throw this one out there. If you have to, there's a divide amongst historians, and it depends on which historian you ask. I guess the blunt question I need to ask you is there a guy named Jesus that actually existed?
Excellent question. I don't know.
Yeah.
And that's kind of the whole point of it, is that we can only go by the evidence that we have available to us. We don't have anything that Jesus left us. We don't have footprints of Jesus. We don't have pictures of Jesus drawn during his lifetime.
No writings.
We don't have any writings from anybody that we can be assured got their information directly from Jesus. And so that's where the question is. Now, the field of biblical studies tends to stay united in the fact that at the core of this, even there's been a lot of tradition and legend that's built around it, but at the core of this was a person who did walk the earth and who did exist. At the same time, there's a group of folks called mythicists that are being called mythicists that challenge that. And as far as I'm concerned, everybody's got the right to challenge anything, but we need to stay on the evidence. And based on that evidence, everybody has to, make a decision for themselves, because it's not like science where we can reproduce these things. It's history. We can only go by what we have and then build from there. So that's kind of the divide, and I don't know that I would call it an equal divide, because the field of biblical studies seems to stay united in that understanding that at the core of this there was a person. But there's been some recent challenges and a whole bunch of books written and then a whole bunch of chatter on the internet about how this person did not exist. So that's basically where it's at. Now, that's not to be confused with the study of the historical Jesus, which would be, what did Jesus stand for? What did he do? How did he live his life? What are the messages that he left for people? That's a totally different and independent study that is really reliant on whether the dude existed or not.
Yeah, so you kind of have to slice through a lot of presupposition, I guess, in this whole discussion.
I think it's all based on presupposition when you're talking about history. There's very few things that we can prove unless we can just pull out the ancient evidence. And since the biblical evidence is not from the time of Jesus, but from a number of years later, that tends to bring up a lot of skepticism. And that's what the mythicists are using as their argument. And of course, I believe that everybody's got a right to make whatever argument they want to make. I think it's foolish to say, we know Jesus existed, case closed. Because we can't do that. We don't have a piece of paper that said Jesus was here.
Well, he didn't carve that in the tomb. Jesus, W-U-Z was here.
with the little Kilroy thing in the nose.
But Robert M. Price, who is one of the scholars that is working with this what they call the Christ myth theory, he makes one presupposition at the beginning that I think is really good to understand, and it goes like this. This is from Christ Myth Theory, page 25. It says, "The historian does not claim clairvoyant knowledge of the past. The historian, so to speak, postdicts based on traceable factors and analogy, but it's all a matter of probabilities." And I think that's an honest way to begin to approach it, is that we can only gather the stuff together, and then from that we have to make the decision.
Well, it seems to me, and this is just my personal thing, that the argument of whether Jesus existed or not is a little bit overblown as far as its importance pertaining to religious belief. I mean, I'm sure if the guy existed, he is an important historical figure, regardless, because it did spawn a religion that has been in control of most of Western society for a long, long time now.
Yeah, but the question is how much of what Jesus stood for was actually perpetuated in what we now know as Christianity. And that's kind of where the divide is, that if we don't know what the guy said, then how can we say this is right? Mm-hmm. It's really difficult to do, and I think that the field of biblical studies is really divided on trying to say exactly what Jesus stood for. I think there's a couple of core things that they all believe in common, and then from there it kind of skews in all different kind of directions, and all those directions are fun.
It is a fun discussion, but I think people, like I said, I think people get lost on that in regards to if Jesus, it becomes a question of Jesus did exist, therefore he was a God or the Son of God.
Right. Two totally different things.
Case closed. Or Jesus didn't exist, therefore none of that has to worry, you don't have to worry about any of divine providence from Jesus. So my point is, it doesn't matter. Even if Jesus existed, the secular movement still has a strong argument. Well, is this guy even divine?
Mm-hmm. Oh, absolutely, yeah.
His existence doesn't prove that he's the Son of God. It just simply proves that there was a guy named Jesus, if you could prove definitively that he did exist.
Mm-hmm. Well, the claims to him being divine are purely faith claims. Mm-hmm. There's no real evidence that we can say proves that he's a divine figure or that he's a supernatural being.
But sure there is.
Well, you have evidence that people
the Bible.
Use, but the Bible is religious propaganda.
It's
not a history.
See, that's your opinion. See, that's not a fact, sir.
Well, I mean, the facts can be verified, and there's various views in the New Testament that are perpetuated by each of the authors. Each of the authors had their own view at their own time, and you can verify that if one author says something happened and another author said something else happened, then both of those cannot be true.
For example,
the law of contradiction. Well, here's a good one. I think it was Mark that said, "He who is not against us is for us," and then Matthew said, "He who is not for us is against us." And those are not the same statements in any way.
No, that one is one and two is two.
Right, they're exclusive. There's numerous examples when you compare the Gospels back and forth, and there's stacks of books that have been written about it. And any one of those are fascinating topics that you could spend hours on each one.
And and it's again going back to the statement: if Jesus existed, therefore he was divine, therefore he was the Son of God, therefore everything he said was true, and the Bible is true ad hoc. The existence of Joseph Smith can probably be proven.
Well, yes, it can definitely be proven.
You can
well, I mean, to a degree. We have his genetic offspring.
Right. And we also have several documents written by the man.
Right.
Okay, probably even public records.
Well, we definitely have. He was tried.
I don't think we found the gold plates yet.
But we haven't found the gold plates.
No.
But nothing he did, nothing he claimed to do, as far as the gold plates is concerned, can be proven. Right. So you cannot prove a divine influence on his life that angels came down.
Exactly. That's why they're two totally different things.
Right.
Trying to establish the existence of a person and then trying to establish what that person stood for, believed, pushed, sold, gave away, whatever.
Well, I mean, in every religion, they never come down and reveal themselves. None of these gods ever reveal themselves to the entire population.
No.
At once. They always reveal themselves to one person, and when they're alone, and
I can trust you.
And
to
by
pass
the
this
way,
message along,
and I'm
I?
so concerned with getting that message passed along that I'm going to give you plates or give you some sort of physical evidence that you can't take with you, that you can't show anyone as evidence that I'm there, but yet it will be evidence to you, and you say, "Trust me, you had it." But yeah, it's ridiculous. That anyone believes this, it's astonishing. But anyway, so the historicity of Jesus. So being, like you said, that he was a historical figure. Well, he did a lot, right? There for people to talk about, and so surely people wrote about him during his time.
Contemporary authors of the time.
Yeah.
Exactly.
Yeah, and we can't say people didn't write about him during his time.
Well, there were historians alive during that time.
Well,
what did they write?
Say we don't have anything.
Well, we have the writings of historians that were around that time, that were walking around in that area, writing about in and around that area, writing about things that happened around that time. What do they say?
Well, if you're talking about the time during the life of Jesus, we don't have anything. The first evidence, what I call the toe print on the historical record, is the writings of Paul. And that's what the mythicists are trying to extrapolate, trying to use to determine whether this Jesus guy was real or not, because we don't have anything earlier than the writings of Paul. Some of the mythicists have written that Paul never talked about a human Jesus, that he talked about a spirit Jesus. That Paul didn't talk about a guy that actually walked on the earth and was born as a human, and died as a human. He talked about Jesus that was this spirit, which would technically be Docetism, which is the belief that Christ was a spirit and not a physical human being, or some of them say that he was both, that there was a Jesus and there was a Christ. But Earl Doherty's written in his latest book, well, I don't know if it's the latest book, but that he attacks the position of Paul and says that Paul didn't write about a human Jesus. And so what that has done as a response to that is that some of the people that want to get into it, like Bart Ehrman, for instance, has responded, and they've basically had debates back and forth in books and on the internet about Paul and what did Paul say. And so I think it's important, if we're going to use Paul, that we need to try and understand what did Paul say. Did Paul ever talk about Jesus as a human being, as a flesh and blood, or did he only describe Jesus as a spirit? And reading Paul is the only way to do that. The problem is we've got a bunch of letters that are attributed to Paul, but of those letters we have 7 letters that across the board, the conservative scholars, the liberal scholars, and the mainstream scholars all agree these are what they call the authentic Pauline letters, or the undisputed Pauline letters. Now, in those 7 letters, we have to take what Paul says. Now, whether we believe what Paul says or not is something differently. But when he says something, it's either something that he wrote, or it's something that someone added later and said Paul said that.
Right.
What they would call an interpolation. But let me give you an example. This is from an anonymous source on the internet from the mythicist position. Not a single instance of any of Paul's writings claims that he ever meets or sees an earthly Jesus, and I agree with that. Nor does Paul give any reference to Jesus' life on earth, except for a few well-known interpolations. Therefore, all accounts about a Jesus could only have come from other believers or his imagination. The problem is that Paul did talk about a physical person, Jesus. He made a number of references to him, and in those references, you have to either say, okay, well, those aren't real, and they were interpolated, they were added later, or you have to say, well, Paul didn't say what he meant.
Right.
And you hear that a lot with people, is, well, this is what it says, but that's not what it means. I tend to take Paul at his word that he believed these things. I'm not saying he's right. I'm just saying that when he wrote something from his experience, that he was trying to write about his experience. There's a couple of those examples. Galatians 1 and 1 Corinthians 15, Paul mentions the brothers of Jesus. He even claims to have met James, the brother of Jesus. So in this conversation, if Jesus were a spirit and not a person, would Paul be saying, I met the brother of the Spirit Jesus? Galatians 2, Paul has a conflict with the followers of Jesus, which would be the first generation followers of Jesus, Peter, James, and John. And in the conversation with them, now whether Jesus existed or not, it cannot be determined by that, but Paul believed that that Peter, James, and John knew Jesus. In Galatians 4:4, he says that Jesus was born of a woman and born under the law. Now that's a human he's describing. That's not a spirit.
Right.
Romans 1:3 and 4, he said that Jesus was descended from David according to the flesh. So Paul, in his mind, believed that Jesus was a person and said that he met his brothers and his friends. 1 Corinthians 11:23, he gives an example of what Jesus did on the night that he was betrayed. Now, that doesn't necessarily say it wasn't a spirit, it was a human, but Paul made it pretty clear in his writings that he did feel like Jesus was a human being and not a spirit. At the beginning of Romans, he kind of says that Jesus became the Messiah, became the Son of God on his death. That his dying and rising from the dead is what made him different, special.
I would
unique.
say so, yeah.
So it wasn't his life.
Well,
it's in the introduction to Romans. It wasn't his life, but it was his death and resurrection that made him special and unique. Now, you get into that whole thing. Did he rise from the dead? That's speculation. You have no historical evidence to say that a person rose from the dead. It's not even in the Bible. The Bible does not describe the resurrection of Jesus. The Bible describes people after the resurrection meeting the resurrected Jesus.
Right.
But there's no story of him, the stone rolling away and him flying up into the sky.
Right.
That the story is that even in Matthew, when the soldiers are there guarding the tomb, they get knocked out and put to sleep so that Jesus can rise from the dead, and they wake up later. They don't even witness it. So it's...
Yeah, because I mean, as a God, I want everybody to know that Jesus is the Son of God. I'm sending him here so that everybody will believe in him and understand that he is the Son of God. So what I do my damnedest to obfuscate any evidence whatsoever that he existed, that he was killed, and that he was legitimately dead. Because, we have people rise from the dead all the time.
Right. Actually, I joked a second ago that rising from the dead would distinguish him amongst people, but actually...
But it doesn't.
According to the Gospels, no, it really doesn't.
Well, not even according to the Gospels, according to science. We have people... First, you have to define what death is. Well, right? And the primitive term of death, I mean, that was if you stopped breathing, then you would be dead.
Well, according to the biblical sources, according to John, Jesus wasn't even the first person to rise from the dead. He raised Lazarus from the dead.
Right.
According to Matthew, when Jesus died, before he rose from the dead, people came out of the graves and walked around Jerusalem. It was like a zombie fest.
Yeah.
So he wasn't the first, but that's what made him special.
They didn't have guns back then or anything. That would have sucked. That would have sucked.
You had to stone the zombies to death.
Well, that's the basis of Walking Dead.
That's why they're slow.
I mean, here you have this big day just before Sabbath. This really famous criminal religious leader just got crucified, and the biggest thing you remember about the day is your zombie aunt and uncle coming after you down the street of Jerusalem. It's
Right. It would be shocking to
I
run
think that
across
would-
people you buried
that
years
would probably
before.
have made the history books.
Sure.
I'm guessing that somebody would have noted, hey, dead people walking around the streets
Well,
of Jerusalem.
it would certainly be something that Philo of Alexandria would have written about had he known about it. Now
Somebody
he was
probably would have relayed that message.
yeah, that kind of thing. If people got up and walked around Jerusalem, then it would certainly make it into the world. Where even in Alexandria, Egypt, Philo, who was really active in the Jewish community at that time, would have said, "Hey, people told me this happened," and he never mentions anything like that.
Matzo balls.
Isn't there
Matzo ball.
isn't there some like some contradiction in Mary's story coming from when she went to the tomb the first time and then she was questioned by someone later?
Yeah, well,
There's some,
each gospel tells a different story.
Yeah.
Now, apologists will try to say, well, you got to pull all these stories together, and from that you get a story. But you
Sure
have
they do.
you have you have 4 authors, and each one of them told a unique story. And I think it's important to
By unique, you mean contradictory, yes. Go ahead.
yeah, well, naturally. I think it's important to understand that Mark said one thing, and that Matthew said another thing, and that Luke said another thing, and John said another thing. Now, the predominant theory in New Testament studies is what they call the two-source theory, and that is that Mark was the first gospel written, that Mark and another anonymous source, Q, that's been lost, was used to manufacture Matthew and Luke, but Matthew and Luke didn't compare their notes. They wrote them independently. And so you get some overlap in those things. You also get some questions and some problems with that. And it's called a theory for a reason, because we
don't fucking
we don't
say that.
I just had to do it. We don't know anything. We have to try and figure it out, and that's what biblical studies does. People often think that biblical studies is Christians that all sit around and hug each other about Jesus, and it's really not. It's really a competitive field. And there's a lot of people that are Christians. There's a lot of people that are not Christians. There's people that are Jewish. There's people that are Muslim. There's people that are Christians but are able to put their beliefs aside and write some good history. And we've got a number of those people. We've also got some atheist biblical scholars. And I don't think it's right to reject any of them without at least giving them all a chance. And if that means reading a Christian source, then, it doesn't hurt to read a Christian source. I can read The Lord of the Rings and not believe everything that's proposed in that.
Blasphemer.
It's all pretty believable, though.
Yeah.
Yeah,
From the
sure.
standpoint.
Well, until you read it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, it
you
sounds
comprehend what the
sounds
words
good.
No, he
from-
was talking about Lord of the Rings.
Yeah.
Not the Bible.
Yeah.
No, I'm not. I'm not an anti Lord of the Rings. I'm not.
Anti-Tolkien?
I'm saying I'm not saying that
anti-Tolkienist.
Mordor never existed.
You can't prove that it didn't, and that's what
what's
you
important, is that
you Mordor theists.
Neither.
A Mordor theists.
Middle Earth creationists.
Middle Earth creationists.
Young Middle Earth creationists.
Yes, young Middle Earth creationists. Those are the best ones. They have the most evidence on their side.
But I think it's important to note that from the standpoint, and people I have this kind of debate with, I wouldn't say on a regular basis, but a fairly consistent basis, that they have that those who are going from the standpoint that Jesus existed, he was divine, and the proof for this, they have just as much of an uphill climb as anyone else in this situation, don't they?
Yeah, well, early Christianity was based on faith, and you don't need evidence for faith. To me, in modern Christianity and apologetics, when I see people saying we can prove this, it's because they don't have faith. If they have faith, they don't need to prove it.
Right.
And I've got a certain amount of respect for people who say, well, this is what I believe, and it's personal for me, and it affects my life in this positive way, and I don't feel that I need to argue with you about it. I've got nowhere to go with that. It's when people come and they say, I can prove that Jesus rose from the dead, or I can prove that Jesus was born of a virgin, or I can prove that prophecy is true in the Bible, because
Or that heaven is real and an eternal place.
or any of those that they rely on faith. And to take faith out of that picture and try to make it a factual argument, to me, is a lack of faith. It's a faithless belief system.
Yeah. I mean, that's really, I agree with that. I mean, you claim it's all based on faith, but you're entirely the whole time trying to scramble for evidence to try to prove your case.
But
then it really is
the existence of the Bible as a source of evidence in and of itself
is not valid.
disproves the whole faith notion. It isn't all based off faith. The only reason that you're even aware that Christianity exists, that Jesus was a person in any way, shape, or form, is due to the Bible. So it's not based off faith. It's based off of evidence. And the evidence is weak, but it is based off evidence. It's based off the existence of this book and what it said.
They'll use it as evidence. Like you said, well, I believe it's right here in my Bible.
Well, the reason you believe it is because it's in the Bible.
Right.
It's not because you have faith.
But
They're
that's what they're taught by religious leaders.
Sure.
Right.
And they trust the religious leaders. And so a lot of times they don't really go into it themselves. And that's when, they start getting tripped up, is when they try to prove something that a pastor said from the pulpit is a fact and can be proven. But then when it comes down to it, it's not quite that easy.
And that was kind of my point in this thing, is that whether or not Jesus existed, if we could prove right now that a guy named Jesus existed around 30 A.D. in Jerusalem, somewhere between Nazareth and Jerusalem, it would not give any credibility to this religious argument that he was divine whatsoever. And, because we could probably prove the existence of Hercules. Would that mean there probably was a guy, or there's evidence?
There's a constellation Hercules, and
Well,
there's not even a constellation.
Actually,
Jesus.
there is evidence that there was a guy named Hercules.
Or you need to go back to Heracles.
Heracles, right? But but he's not the son of Zeus.
Hercules.
Heracles.
But he's probably not the son of Zeus. Because as many times as I've heard somebody tell me that we're living in the end times, and the book of Revelations backs it up. When you examine it from that viewpoint, looking at it, it all sounds kind of silly, because you've taken something like this, which is kind of a coded message, taking a stab at political and religious movements of the day, and now we've infused it into prophecy and how it's declared to us that we're all going to die soon. Or not all of us are going to die. Some of us are going to be taken up. Whatever the heck they attribute to.
Well, now the Bible actually never speaks of a rapture. Maybe you could talk about that a little bit. The whole rapture scenario is kind of a...
Well, it's a 19th century invention. But, yeah, it's not anything that anyone prior to the 1850s had ever thought of before. It was kind of invented by John Darby and developed as a dogma that he preached in order to frighten people into joining his sect of the religion.
Oh, okay.
But as far as Revelation goes, even in the Christian world, the Protestants have several views of what Revelation means. The Catholics have a view. The various sects like the Jehovah's Witnesses, the Mormons, the Seventh-day Adventists, all of them have their own unique view of what Revelation talks about.
I want to stop you right there. Are
Good.
you trying to tell me that Christians have varying degrees of interpretations of God's
No way.
holy word?
No.
all the same.
No.
They don't completely agree with one another. on what it
If
all
you were to
means?
say something like that, then Christians could walk around and say stuff like, "I'm not your typical Christian," and they never do that.
No. I'm not religious. I'm Christian. That's
Yeah.
And these other people are not actually Christians.
right.
Yeah, they would be able to do that, and since that does not happen
No,
at all,
ever.
Yeah,
then it's obviously there was one book,
Yeah, it's all a monolithic belief, and they all believe exactly the same.
exactly the same thing. Not.
But I think what's important if anyone really wants to understand the Book of Revelation, and
And who doesn't?
I don't know why anyone would or wouldn't, but if they do, the worst place to look is some guy who's trying to push some agenda in the 21st century, because the Book of Revelation never talks about our time. The Book of Revelation describes things that are soon to happen at the end of the first century. It was a viewpoint that they believed, and I'll get to who they were. They believed that these were events that were going to happen to them soon. The main thing is to take a look at apocalypticism, which was a Jewish movement during the Hellenistic period, and then the Jewish Christian movement, which was at the beginning of the Common Era. But in an apocalyptic worldview, the world is seen as a timeline. You have the past, you have the present, and you have the future. And apocalyptic writings would always go into detail about talking about the past. They would talk about what was back there in the past and what these things are that are leading up to the present. Now, they would often take the present that they're writing in and make that the future, as though they were predicting the future. And if they could predict that future, then the stuff that they predicted beyond that would be just assured, because we've already predicted the future. That's why you have people who say that the book of Daniel was written in 600 BCE, when biblical scholars all agree that it was written around 167, because he was describing events in the past and then describing events in the present as though they were in the past. That way, when he predicts the future, if the stuff he's already predicted came true, then certainly this other stuff can come true. But apocalypticists did not die off in the first century, and they're as popular today as they've ever been. Harold Camping was an apocalypticist. Yes.
What?
And it's a pretty common dispensational view among Protestants that the book of Revelation is talking about events that are going to happen to us in the future. But they never really, it doesn't say that. If you read the book, it never talks about things that are going to happen to us. It talked about things that were going to happen to them in their future. The problem is that their future came and went, and those things never happened, so they have to be reinterpreted.
Mm-hmm. Because if
like
you get to
Harold
the point
Camping.
where,
Exactly.
right, because you get to the point where,
And Billy Graham.
obviously these things didn't happen. These people are either full of BS, or they intended these things to happen in the far distant future.
Exactly.
And,
Except it's never in the far distant future. It's
right.
always,
yeah, you're right.
It's
you're
always just around the corner.
That's right. It is. The world is always close to an end, mainly because of natural disasters. I know. I hear it all the time. Natural disaster occurs. Oh, the end times are upon us. This is a sign from God that the world is going to end soon.
The weather's changing.
Because
the Lord's coming back soon.
War, natural disaster, because war and natural disaster
There's
are obviously brand new things.
There's the floods.
Mm-hmm.
Jesus is coming.
Mm-hmm.
Droughts. Jesus is coming. Earthquakes. Jesus is coming.
The mailman doesn't show
Price
up.
of gasoline goes up. Jesus is coming.
So Jesus just has some really weird porn.
Jesus comes a lot.
He loves disaster.
Mm-hmm.
Well, that would be the apocalyptic view. If you read the book of Revelations, it is a freaking bloody book. The apocalypticists, even Harold Camping, if you would listen to him before he debunked himself, when you would listen to him, he would describe this terrible world that everybody except his group was going to suffer. And that's part of what pleases the apocalypticists, is that they're not going to have to face all these nasty things that all these other people are going to have to face. The problem is it just never happens. Mm-hmm. John Darby was convinced it was going to happen in the 19th century. Mm-hmm. Hal Lindsey was convinced it was going to happen in the 1980s.
Billy Graham, 1999.
They all do it now. They've gotten to where they stop setting dates.
I'll give Hal Lindsey credit, because watching the hairstyles of the 80s, it's easy to see
Jesus
how somebody might have been slowly being raptured because their hair kept going up.
I thought you meant God was going to end the world because the hairstyles were too much.
No, I just
No.
the hair
That was
kept
their
getting
spirit
the
leaving.
hair
That
kept
would've been the
getting
clothes.
taller and taller. They were slowly being raptured.
Definitely
Lindsay
signs
was
of
onto
the end.
something there, but it didn't pan out.
Excellent. I was wondering what the cause of all of that was.
So that's the Christian view, or the if you're going to have a monolithic Christian view of
Yeah, but there's not.
But there's not.
That's the thing is Catholics tend to view the Book of Revelation as analogy and metaphor. They believe that the kingdom of God was here on earth. The Protestants, especially since John Darby introduced dispensationalism, and then all of the new preachers have taken up the dispensational view. It's a tool. It's a really good tool to scare somebody and to get them to believe that this stuff is fixing to happen. And before it happens, you need to, join my church.
Right.
Give me
And
your
pay
money.
tithes and-
Right. Yeah, and it's a good scare tactic.
Oh, it's
'Cause,
excellent.
natural disasters and war happen all the time, and they've happened since before the time Jesus would have showed up.
Oh yeah.
Well,
The Epic of Gilgamesh, which comes from Sumerian legend, is the Noah's flood story. So obviously there was some sort of flood of a huge amount of area at that time, which would cause the people to pass down this story through the generations. And when we're talking about Revelations, it's there's a saying that goes around in Christianity is read Revelation because it'll scare the hell out of you. Implying that somehow it will save your life because you'll realize the things that are coming. So non-denominational Christians believe that Revelation is an actual an apocrypher, a book specifically detailing things that, like you said, are to come for our people, not necessarily theirs. But then when you do
My
the
group,
study,
not yours.
yeah, when you do the study of of Revelation, like he was saying, you learn where it was written, who it was written for, and if you could go into that, that'd be actually.
Well, before you go into the thing of that, just for everybody out there, if if you're listening in, you want to call in, just we are available via Skype.
Yes.
GTFO Texas, GTFO TX.
TX.
Just call in via Skype, and we'll patch you in. Brandon. Anyway,
Any questions are welcome.
anyone, no one in
We need
particular.
to stay-
specifically Christians, if there are any out there that want to take exception to anything that's being said, feel free. Please
Absolutely.
call. Please
Yeah,
call.
yeah.
We beg of you. Go ahead.
Most importantly, I think the thing to understand is after the destruction of Jerusalem and the temple in 70, then the Christian movement ceased to become less anchored in Jewish ideology, and the Pauline Christianity had gone out to all the pagans and converted a bunch of pagans into the belief system, and they had merged a lot of that stuff together. The Jewish Christians at the end of the first century certainly believed, because they were Jewish and Jesus was Jewish, that they had the correct view, and that this Pauline view, this view of these pagans who were not circumcised, who didn't follow the kosher laws, who didn't follow the Torah, that these people were not true believers. They had co-opted the true religion from them. And that's the sense of frustration from the author of Revelation, is that all of these people they're taking my God, but they're not taking what my God told them to do, and they're going to pay for it. And to me, I see, and I had this conversation some time ago, that the book of Revelation in the first century would be comparable to science fiction of today. There's a lot of, if you watch the science fiction channel, or if you like science fiction literature, or if you like science fiction movies, there are always things that are relative that, for instance, our world is we've got great technology, but the things are spinning out of control. They're getting worse and worse. But at some point, something or someone is going to come along that's going to fix all of that stuff and make it right. And that's kind of the way a lot of those stories go. The Matrix, the Terminator, even Star Wars.
Somewhat metaphorical, somewhat allegorical, but always...
But they're relative to the world that we live in.
Always a tale of warning.
Yeah, they make sense to you in the world that you live in, right. Even though some of the things, that the imagery may be abstract or it may be odd or it may be different, but it makes sense to you.
Right.
And that was the obvious intent of the Book of Revelation, was to one, get the people to pay attention. And the ultimate purpose, as odd as this seems for the Book of Revelation, the purpose of the book was to give comfort to those people who were in the group.
Those people,
because
who
all
were
this nasty stuff that's going to happen to all these other people,
right? Not
them. So the people that were in the in group, they got to avoid all of this kind of stuff. And it's I think it's a fascinating book. I think it's a book that because Christianity has used the book so much and have gone so many different directions in it, that anybody that's not a Christian just looks at the Book of Revelation and goes, "Ooh, the dude was on crack."
Yeah.
But if you look at it as a piece of propaganda against the Roman Empire and against the co-opting of the religion, and you understand some of that metaphor and some of that imagery that was used, then it's really a fascinating book. And I don't see enough people, really interested in talking about the history of it. Now, the one exception would be Elaine Pagels, who's recently written a book. I think it's titled Revelations, which not only discusses the Book of Revelation, but it discusses other apocalyptic literature as well, because there was a lot of it. Christians tend to think that the Book of Revelation is unique, but it's not. There's a lot of apocalyptic literature from that time. The book of Daniel is also an apocalypse. There's an apocalypse of Abraham. There's an apocalypse of it escapes me at the moment, but there's a bunch of apocalyptic writing, and Elaine Pagels in her new book is certainly going to look at all of those different writings and how those writings were interpreted at that time, and how the Book of Revelation fits in with other apocalyptic writing and the apocalyptic mindset. But if you don't get into that kind of stuff, it's probably not a good book. But if people do get into it, it's got to be a great book. Although I haven't read it.
Even the idea of a Messiah, that in old-fashioned Judaism, pre-Jesus, the idea of Messiah was in and of itself apocalyptic.
Not necessarily. There was some views that were that way. Those tended to be influenced by the Hellenistic view. But to a Judean Jew, a Messiah was going to be a king, a king who is going to rise up and free God's people from all of oppression, and was going to put them at the top of the food chain.
Right.
And they were going to rule the world, and the rest of the world was going to look up to them.
Well, that's kind of what I'm getting at. I get the sense that most of these apocalyptic views are coming from a point of view of retribution, people who want retribution. Somebody's oppressing you.
Right.
Crime is bad.
Now we see the violence inherent in the system.
Yeah.
Help them be repressed.
But the idea behind anyone's apocalyptic view is they're all going to be dead or suffering, and we're going to be up here, okay, on top of the world.
Yeah, and I agree. And here's the way I see that. Generally, the apocalypticists feel as though technology or worldviews are passing them by.
Right.
They're moving forward without them.
Right.
They're not taking them seriously anymore. That
why not?
Whatever is happening in the world is not paying attention to what they think is important. Mm-hmm. And so naturally, as that group responds to that, the response is, well, you're going to pay one day. Mm-hmm. You're going to pay for this for not listening to me when I tried to tell you. And it's pretty common and I'm sure as you have conversations with specifically Protestant Christians, they're convinced that all of this stuff is going to take place, and you really need to get your stuff straight because when it happens, it's going to be too late. You won't have a chance.
And you will hear almost every single time. Most of them will say, almost every single time. Most of them will say, "I think it's going to happen in my lifetime."
Right. Because
there's no way you could get run over by a car tomorrow.
You can't put it far off in the future because then you can't get the people to join.
Right.
It has to be right now. That's why Harold Camping put his dates in the near immediate future. Mm-hmm. The problem was that the near immediate future became the present and then the past. Mm-hmm. And so,
as time tends to do,
the same thing happened to John Darby. Is that he looked for this stuff right around the corner. They had people all gather together. They gave away their property. They gave away everything that they had: their clothes, their houses,
their life savings,
their animals, everything. And then when it didn't happen, then they were broken.
Right.
They had to go back to people and say, "Well, I know I gave this to you, but I don't have anything, and I need it back." I kind of relay that to a lot of what you see in the camping movement, where the guys sold everything they had and they bought a camper. Mm-hmm. And then they started driving around the country warning people of the end. And one guy had even budgeted everything that he had left to run out of money on May 21st, 2011. And so he had his wife and his kid with him in a camper. And they had planned to make it out to California, where camping is, on the 21st of September, or May 21st.
May
21st.
Well, which one?
Yeah.
It was October too.
The first one was the second one was October.
One was the rapture, and the other was the actual end of the world, where everything went up in blazes.
Well, wasn't that supposed to be 7 years from that date?
Don't think happened. No, it was the same year.
Oh wow! So they just forgo the whole 7-year tribulation.
They rewrote it.
Oh,
they rewrote it and reinterpreted it so that it meant
he found what he wanted. Code in the Bible,
and that's the key. Is that they're always reinterpreting things to say what they want them to say. And to me, it's most important, if you're fascinated with this stuff, for some reason I am, is that you need to understand what the author meant, who the author was talking to, what the world was like in that time when he was writing.
Well, wouldn't you have to first determine who the author is in order to figure that out? I mean,
to
know what was going on in the time. I mean, you have to at least put a date to it.
Well, we have a pretty good idea. Like in the Book of Revelations, he tells that he's writing from the island of Patmos, which is right off in the Mediterranean Sea. He gives 7 churches that are in Asia Minor that he's talking to. So you have the area and you have the time. The Book of Revelations even goes into pretty good detail when it talks about the kings. That some of the kings have died, one is alive today, and then some will be alive, and then the end will come. So when he says one is alive today, he's giving you a pretty good idea of what that time frame is. So you just got to figure out who that one is. Now, the problem is that it was, I think it was Diocletian at the end of the 1st century, and they retrojected it back as though it was Nero, so that it could look like he was telling the future. The problem, again, is that it just didn't happen.
Well, yeah, that keeps popping up in apocalyptic prophecy, is that doesn't ever happen.
Yeah, I've said before
that's the problem with prophecy in general.
Yeah.
I've said before that the only thing that is doomed in apocalyptic viewpoint is the apocalyptic view itself. Yeah. Eventually, I think people will get tired of hearing the same old thing.
Now, recently we've had the non-religious apocalyptic prophecies. I guess you could tie them to religion in one way or the other. But we had the Y2K, which is not necessarily a religious.
Went off like a bang.
Yeah, I know. And now we've got, at the end of this year, we've got the Mayan calendar 2012.
Oh, yay.
Right, which is all based on interpretations.
Yeah.
From what I understand, the Mayans never really said the world was going to come to end in 2012. It's an interpretation based on reading the calendar and changing things around to move to a more viewpoint. And I think you and I had a discussion one time about, if the Mayans were so great at telling the future, why couldn't they tell their own?
Yeah,
right.
Why didn't they see the Spanish coming?
Because they didn't see the Spanish. Yeah, they didn't see the Christians coming.
Well, another thing you have to remember about the Mayan calendar is they did not account for leap years. in there, which would have made the end of the world several years ago. So it's all bogus.
Yeah.
I think. I
It's
I guess
Benjamin
we're still
Franklin's
alive.
fault.
Can't prove it.
Can't prove that we're alive.
That we're
Can't, but we
alive.
could be just a computer simulation.
That would be amazing, and I would probably be able to fly.
Tuesdayism.
Actually, thanks to Ustream, you really can't prove that we're alive.
Yeah, exactly.
Right now, so it's
We're live in and out.
At any point, we may not be live.
Coming and going here.
That's a dig. That's a dig.
So you're having a tough time validating our existence.
But we are here, and we are here for you.
We
and,
are here.
We love taking calls. We love taking.
You can chat with us. Get on the chat.
Yeah, there's a
Get on
chat
the
room.
We're
in
watching the
Ustream.
Chat, huh?
We're watching the chat. People
Yeah,
Doesn't
complaining
seem to
about
be a whole
commercials.
lot going on in the chat. So if you guys want to get in there and throw your questions out to us, and we will have our
Brandon.
our biblical scholar of the evening, eccentric, answer them for
Yeah,
you.
let's get some good biblical scholarly questions for eccentric, and we'll get him to. fly.
Larry Jones says, let's see, according to Jesus himself, the second coming should have happened in the first century. There are some standing here today who will not taste death.
Yeah,
Direct
I
quote.
think that's the Gospel of Mark that he's quoting from. I would think it'd be Mark 13.
Yeah. I think.
Yeah, and again, you have Christians in 2012 reinterpreting the actual words, saying that the actual words don't mean what the words mean; they mean
Something else.
us now.
Something
Yeah.
else.
But to me, if you're going to read the Bible and you're going to believe the Bible, then the last thing you need to do is change what the Bible says. When you change what the Bible says, then you kind of show that you don't believe what the Bible says.
Again, I'm going to ask. I'm going to stop you right there. Are you insinuating that certain people loosely interpret biblical verse?
Well, I think it's natural. I think that a lot of people, when they read the Bible that because of what they've been taught, that the Bible, if they open the Bible and read it, it will show you things about your life. And so when they go into that with the presupposition they're going to get something, then they naturally find something, and it generally always agrees with them.
Yeah.
It's like that book the kid was reading in the Never-Ending Story. Yeah.
Sebastian.
Sebastian. Yeah. It just kept changing, and it had to do with his life. Yeah. It's similar to that.
It's convenient. There's that self-centeredness that Christians have. That everything is centered around them.
But they're humble.
But of course, yeah. But the sun rotates around the earth,
Right.
Until Galileo debunked it.
The reference that Larry made, I'm not sure that there's a couple of different places where it talks about the things that were going to happen soon. In the little apocalypse of Mark 13, the author has Jesus warning these people, and he describes things that they can look for to see that the end is near. He talks about the destruction of the temple. He talks about people falling away. And now when those things happen, then it says, even so, you too, when you see these things happening, recognize that he is near, right at the door. Truly I say to you, this generation will not pass away until all these things take place. Heaven and earth may pass away, but my words will not pass away. So, not to bring the Bible too much into the conversation, but
into a biblical conversation.
But it clearly says that this generation will not pass away. So when that generation did pass away, then they're at a crossroads.
Then Jesus was a liar.
You have to either Jesus was a liar or he didn't mean what he said. He meant this, and that's
Something
where
else.
interpretation comes in. That's where you have one of the ones that I think we probably all know is that this generation was talking about when Israel becomes a nation in 1948, and then a generation
That
is
generation's
40.
damn near
A
gone now.
generation is 40 years, so that means the end of the world is going to be 1988. Of course, 1988 came and went, and it didn't happen.
Right.
So Brandon says, because he says it won't let him chat on the board, but it will let you call in via Skype, so you don't really need to chat. But because we'd really like to hear what you have to say about this. But he says, but eccentric. What about then we, the living ones who remain on the earth, shall simultaneously be caught up along with the resurrected dead.
1 Thessalonians.
In the clouds, yes. In the clouds to meet the Lord in the air. And so always, through the eternity of the eternities, we shall be with the Lord. 1 Thessalonians 4,
You're going to meet up with him
17.
in the cloud?
Yeah,
I know my Bible.
That's what it says.
Yeah, exactly. I don't understand the point. It says, then we, the living ones who remain. That doesn't
That
necessarily...
means that Paul thought he was going to be one of the living ones that remain.
Exactly.
The living
Within this
ones
generation, right? So that generation still hadn't yet died. And so he was expecting to stay alive.
That's what most Christians use to reference the rapture.
Yeah,
Right,
absolutely.
Is he asking that in reference to the rapture, or is he asking that to what he was
Well, I
talking
think
about
that
there?
because we had said earlier that there really is no
biblical reference to the rapture.
to the rapture in Revelation. I think is what we were really talking about there. Bringing.
Well, you said that.
Yeah, no, there is no reference in Revelation. There's
Right,
no
You
doubt.
said there was a 19th century.
Yeah, John Nelson Darby was an English pastor or a British pastor who some say, and it's just a legend, so I can't say this is what happened, but some say that he got the idea from a teenage mystic girl or a girl who was sick and having a fever, and she described this world, and then he started what's called dispensationalism, which can be Googled. And dispensationalism is the beginning of the idea of the rapture.
Now, how does that correlate or not correlate to that verse right there in First Thessalonians?
Well, it was the verse he used. But in context, and I'd have to remember what that verse number is right off the top of my head.
1 Thessalonians
4:17.
Yep.
Sorry, we're researching here.
Give us a minute on the Googles.
The Googles.
Excellent.
And there's many different interpretations. Obviously, there's King James, New International, New King James International version, New Version of the Holy. I don't know. I'm just making shit up.
Right. Well, the
1997.
the book of 1 Thessalonians was a response to the Thessalonians who had apparently written to Paul with some problems. And so he responded back to them to answer their questions. And, of course, one of those questions was that they had understood that Jesus was coming back. Now,
Hey, I hear he's coming back.
Some of our friends who believe this have died. What happens to them? Because if Jesus comes back and he's going to take us all into the new era, what about the people who have died? And so Paul addresses that in that chapter 4, starting in verse 13. And I hate to just read scripture because anybody can read it, but that verse 17 says 16 says, "For the Lord himself will descend from heaven with a shout, with the voice of the archangel, and with the trumpet of God, and the dead in Christ will rise first." Okay, there's the issue of what happens to the dead people. The dead in Christ shall rise first. Then we who are alive and remain, which means Paul believed he was going to be alive, will be caught up together with him in the clouds to meet the Lord in the air, and so always be with the Lord. But he doesn't say he's taking them to heaven. It does say in 16, "For the Lord himself will descend from heaven," but it doesn't say that he will take them back up to heaven.
No,
They're going to the clouds.
They're going to the clouds, so they're going to go up there with all of your story.
Right. The understanding in early Christianity was this was all going to happen here on earth. Even in the book of Revelation, a new heaven and a new earth will descend from above.
Which is not a very big, according to the dimensions they give us. What,
That's
1,000 miles?
the city of Jerusalem.
by
Yeah, the new
1,000
city of
miles,
Jerusalem.
It's pretty small.
Yeah, and
That's
Considering
going to
what
be
God
a
could have done.
very crowded heaven.
There is 7 billion people right now.
well, it would have to be real small because each gate was made out of one pearl.
Oh.
So I mean, it's either
could
a
be
big
giant pearl.
It was a model,
Or
or there's giant
or a little
clams
small
somewhere.
There are giant clams everywhere.
I mean,
this is
giant
Southeast Texas.
clams.
This is Southeast Texas.
I mean, clams.
I don't think you understand what he means
That's
by
a little
giant.
lowbrow. I
I
apologize.
mean, a clam the size of a house.
I think it's
awful.
easy for anybody who happens to be listening to simply look up the history of dispensationalism or to look up the history of John Darby, and you can see when and how it was that he created this viewpoint that Christians were going to be taken up to heaven. Again, he was convinced that all of this stuff was fixing to happen soon, and of course it didn't.
Obviously, Paul there very convinced that it's going to happen.
Well, naturally, yeah. I think Paul was an apocalyptic. I think Paul was a mystic, and I think that he was convinced. That was why he was so dedicated to going out there and beating the streets and pushing his message, because he was convinced that all of this stuff that the world was in a downward spiral, that it was just terrible, that it had not gotten better, it had gotten worse. People had gotten away from the way God intended the world to be, and then he was coming back, and when he was coming back, he wanted people to be ready. And
I gotta side with him on that, because I hate whenever I'm ready to go. I want everybody to be ready. I'm not going to come back to the house.
Wait for somebody to get their shit together.
Get their shoes on. It's like, you knew I was coming. Be ready, damn it.
Bake a damn cake.
All right, Jesus standing there looking at his watch.
I think.
All right, you got everything? You ready?
Yeah,
Yeah, hurry up. Go
The
to the
meter
bathroom.
is running.
Yeah, I think to try to defend Paul, I don't think that he was trying to con people. In his mind, he believed this was happening, and he believed that not only the Jews but all people were God's children, and that God wanted all of those people to come home, and that was his view. Now, there's lots of religious leaders that have great philosophies, but that doesn't necessarily mean they're right. And in Paul's case, apparently he just wasn't right.
Well, he was beyond not right. Paul was also not a great philosophy. His view was not very great at all. I mean, women should be silent.
Well, I don't think Paul said that. I think that's later.
What?
Yeah,
but Paul certainly said that, because that's attributed to Paul.
Well, Paul said there's neither Greek nor Jew, there's neither man nor woman, there's neither free man nor slave in the kingdom. They're all equal. Now, he lived in a misogynistic world. He lived in a patristic world in which men ruled over women, in which landowners ruled over slaves, in which the Jews were kind of beat down. They were a little small group.
That makes his philosophy flawed. I mean,
I'm not saying it's not flawed.
Just because he lived it, that's not an excuse for holding on to a misogynistic value system. Just because that's the way everybody thought, you're just as flawed as everybody else at that point. And he didn't have a good view. I know Brandon likes. He actually says that Paul was actually very pro-woman.
Yeah, I agree.
You agree with that?
Mm-hmm. Yeah. I think that what happened, and again,
but you agree. Hold on, you agree for a completely different reason. You agree because you don't attribute the anti-woman writings to Paul. Brandon does. He says those are all written by Paul.
That's a dilemma. That's a dilemma. But I think historically, if Paul's message had been liberating for women, which apparently it was, because a lot of women and a lot of slaves who could never climb up above men found that this message gave them a new freedom, and so they followed this new freedom. The problem was that religious leaders had to beat the women back down, put them back where they belong.
Back in the kitchen.
So that's why you see in like the pastoral epistles in Timothy, where women are told to shut up, be pregnant, do what you're told to do, and if your kids do not rebel, then you can be saved. And I just don't see that coming from Paul.
Oh wow, that's a pretty sad scenario for the.
Sleazy P. Martini says that the verse you're referring to in Corinthians is an interpolation. Which verse? In
Right.
Corinthians?
Yeah, that's one of the ones that a lot of scholars say it's so out of character for Paul that it also, if I'm not mistaken, in that particular verse, there's a flow in the text that's interrupted by that verse that's dropped in there, and that's why that a lot of scholars say that that's an interpolation.
Yeah, I mean, you can definitely hold. I could see holding the position that Paul was pro-woman, or at least Paul was pro-equality.
In a world that's impossible,
right?
But
you have to then accept that there's been some funny business going on in the Bible, and you have to now move away from the Bible contains stuff that actually happened. And you have to now start saying, okay, well, there's some stuff that's
I think the Bible does contain things that actually happened. But just not everything in the Bible happened.
Right. And that there's things in the Bible that were completely fabricated by the church. And you have to accept that in order to accept that Paul is pro-woman. If you don't accept that, then you can't reconcile 1 Timothy to...
It's difficult.
Yeah.
I think a person can reconcile anything they want if they try hard enough.
Oh, absolutely.
Not
most things.
Not publicly
in their own mind.
In their own.
Look at Mormonism. I mean, come on.
Yeah, in their own head.
Really what matters is rationalizing it in your own mind. If you can't rationalize it, you either have to change it, or you're stuck.
Or you live with
in the
cognitive dissonance. You know,
that'd be the word for it.
Yeah.
Or the phrase for it, I guess.
Which is not exactly an agreement. It's just,
cognitive dissonance.
It's basically your own mental agreement to disagree with yourself.
Well, I think each person has to make the decision.
I don't agree with that.
For themselves.
But I kind of do.
Somehow.
We've actually seen cognitive dissonance in, I'm going to call her the teacher. Mm-hmm. The teacher has actually expressed. We've seen it on the face of a person, and you make a statement. Do you believe this in the Bible, that this actually happened?
Yeah.
Yes, but no. I mean, that was the actual response. And, okay, well, do you believe this is going to happen? Yes-ish.
At that point, I wanted.
Yes, but
at that
no.
Point, I wanted to ask that person if they had been tested for multiple personality syndrome.
Yes, but no.
Because I mean, what you're dealing with here, you can't. The same person cannot occupy both of those answers at once.
But she did, and that was disturbing to watch.
She did it well.
No,
but
she didn't.
That's the human struggle. It doesn't exist only in religion. Look at politics.
No, I understand that.
Look at our worldviews. People, we struggle with things, and if we don't resolve those things, then that's when we live in that confusing world where we say one thing but another thing is true. And then
that's where that hypocrisy is born from, right? Because you are holding two completely opposing views, and so it allows you to make statements that are in contradictory, and your actions can be contradictory to what you say because of the fact that you hold these two. I think it's the reason why we see so much hypocrisy in the speech of Christians, because they say it without ever really even recognizing that it's there. They'll say things to me like, you're an idiot and your argument has no merit because you called people names.
Yeah. Or you cuss.
Yeah.
Or you use some slang or some kind of cuss word.
But I mean, they called me a name and then said, by calling a name, your argument has no merit. So
I think it's a human struggle outside of religion, but includes religion. I think that if each one of us were to be critical of ourselves, we're all hypocrites from time to time. I mean, we all have this one worldview that we corrupt by our existence.
Well, and I think that's
Now, we try not to, and that's
very
growth.
true. We try not to. I think recognition of that, though, is important.
Right.
Recognition and an attempt
the first
to correct that.
Yeah, it's okay to be wrong. I mean,
everybody's going to be wrong at some point.
At some point.
And everybody's going to be hypocritical.
Even science is wrong.
It's the ability to recognize it and correct it is the important thing. To completely ignore it and to completely ignore it for the face value of just being right, a different thing. Not so good.
I agree with that.
But we do it. But we do it.
We do it. We do. But you have to be a little better about
Yeah, I mean,
correcting
how many times have you been driving down the road and you laugh at somebody for yelling at somebody else in their car? You see them over there in the car, and they're just yelling at somebody in the car. And then, a few days later, you find you're doing the same thing.
It's
It's a human thing, and we have to struggle with it. I think that's the only way that we grow is by understanding our flaws and understanding what we've done wrong so that we can fix it and try not to do it again. And we always do. I think that's just part of being human.
it is part of it.
Sleazy also asked, what is a what is that? Mythicist?
Oh, a mythicist?
Any mythicists among you?
I've never even seen that word. A mythicist is somebody who believes that
Everything in the Bible is myth.
Jesus was a mythical figure.
Yeah, well, it's the mythicist movement was what we discussed in the segment prior to this.
Right.
Is a group of people who believe that all the stories of the Christ or Jesus Christ do not go back to an individual, but they were all basically various myths that were cobbled together to create the new religion. And it stands at odds with the majority of the biblical studies field. And it's not a strong position, but at the same time, I don't think it's a position that just because it's not a strong position that it needs to be wholesale rejected. I think it needs to be discussed. And that is what, in that last segment that we talked about, was that there is a discussion. The problem is that discussion falls apart pretty quick, and then it turns back into ad hominem attacks and attacking people's credibility, and instead of actually discussing the material. And so, in other words, this debate between these authors is really no different than the debates you find on YouTube and Twitter.
And as I pointed out, it comes down to a matter of point. If Jesus has really existed, he was the Son of God, or if Jesus didn't exist, there's no such thing as God. Neither one of those are all
two totally separate
correlate.
things.
Yeah.
The mythicist position is that a historical Jesus did not exist. There is not a person at the root of the Jesus traditions. The historian's position is that there is a Jesus at the root of this position, or the root of the movement, but then traditions and new concepts were added and changed around, but that doesn't mean that this person didn't exist.
Which is, like I said, the prior segment, and hopefully,
Right.
So now that
Hopefully we didn't lose that.
Hopefully, we didn't lose that.
for the sake
It was a good
of talking about it, I mean, if we're going to talk about whether or not Jesus really existed, I mean, maybe we should probably address some of the evidence for and against. I mean, obviously, there's evidence for his existence if people were talking about him, but there's obviously evidence, or a lack thereof, of evidence that shows that he existed. And then I think, Vic and I talked about a while back that if we're going to argue with Christians on certain topics, it's probably better just to go ahead and admit that he...
Well, there's a probability that he existed because the fact that he was not a prophet, but
an idea, or
a rabbi or somebody that was running around claiming to... I mean, John the Baptist was a similar type person, right? And so...
Well, that John the Baptist is another person that you can put in that same category.
Exactly, that's what I'm saying.
If you're going to draw the conclusion that Jesus never existed, then John the Baptist and thousands of other characters throughout history have to be relegated to that same mythical position.
Obi-Wan Kenobi.
Shakespeare.
I'm sorry, I went the wrong way.
Well, yeah, but we even at least have writings.
That's true.
But
do we know that he wrote those?
Right.
No.
Or was it somebody just like William Shakespeare?
Yeah, it does. When you change the definition of it, it does. There are.
Yeah, that's where the historical mythicism dilemma catches, and I think it needs to be resolved, and it will be. I'm all for cutting edge people wanting to introduce new ideas and come up with new concepts, and then discussing those and trying to figure out where things stand. But the position has historically been that Jesus did exist. This challenge, the mythicist position, is probably, I guess, maybe about 100 years old. That a couple of authors wrote about it, and then a couple more authors wrote about it, and now in our generation, there's a number of authors that are writing about it, and then there's biblical scholars that are responding to them. Robert M. Price is actually a credentialed biblical scholar, teaches New Testament studies, and he maintains the mythical position. And Bart Ehrman, at the same time, is an agnostic biblical scholar, and he maintains the historical position. So it's good to have it. As far as I'm concerned, I think it's great to see these guys duking it out. And it, if nothing else, it tightens up the methodology that we use to try to determine what historical evidence is.
Yeah. And it may be a case of never being able to fully determine this.
I don't, unless somebody comes up with something. Robert M. Price made a statement that I think is really good. If I can find it real quick, that I put into my notes. That I'll have to find it.
Thank you, Larry.
Big hand.
I bought this shirt especially for this show.
So while you're looking for that, Brandon, for some reason thinks this is he wants to know your opinion on this. In the last show, we had a discussion about some of the biblical terms that were kind of silly, but one of the terms was one of the different types of love that are mentioned in the Bible, like agape. I personally, I'm not going to speak for
wasn't that the Suzuki Agape? That was the SUV from a few years ago, was it not?
Oh, yeah, that was the one that I think it flipped over really easy whenever.
It did.
Oh, that was a sidekick. Okay, no, the Agape, I guess maybe that was a little bit wider stance. It handled better in the corners, but but we were talking about how it's just ridiculous. There's love is simply just a chemical, in the brain. It's just a chemical process in the brain. This is how we experience it because we're getting flooded with chemicals. Brandon believes that there's different types of love, and he was wondering if you agreed with Will that only a Christian believes in different types of love, like he said in the first show.
I don't know if I would say that only Christians believe that. I would say that anyone who believes that a soul exists would certainly have different views, and that's just about all religions. Muslim, Jew, Christian, Hindu.
I think Brandon, in that he doesn't ever take the Bible literally anymore. He used to, but he doesn't anymore.
Well, hopefully he takes it seriously.
Yeah. Too seriously, I think. But
that's for him to decide.
But Will, I think, because Will's experience is Christian, right? So he's going to speak. Only a Christian would believe in different types of love, right? But I don't know if he meant.
I don't know if I necessarily even agree with my own statement.
Well,
I made that statement, I don't know if.
I think one of the interesting things, without me actually doing it, somebody either listening or sitting here is welcome to do it, is go to the dictionary and look at the definition of love. There's like 40 different definitions for the word of love. Whether it's love pizza, which was I love pizza. I love my animals. I love my wife. I love life. I love to sleep in on Saturday morning. All of those are the same word, but they each have a little bit of a different meaning. And so, I'm not sure if I'm getting to the point that you guys are wanting me to get to.
No, it's just that the fact is that love as a feeling, right? You love pizza. That just really means, honestly, that you enjoy the taste of pizza. Yeah. It doesn't mean that you actually love pizza. We're misusing the word love. Right?
It's a fond affection. That's what I'm saying. If you look in the dictionary, Merriam-Webster,
you wouldn't caress the box.
There's a bunch of different.
Yeah, you could. You may.
Well, that would be a sexual love, but there could also be.
That's not necessarily sexual. You can sit there, you caress the head of a child. Doesn't mean sexual.
Wait, is there something? Right. Is there something wrong with caressing the box? I'm just asking for a friend.
Does your friend? Which pizza are we talking about? Is this Papa John's?
No. This is like some
Little
Chicago
Caesars
deep dish stuff.
Oh, deep dish. That's kind of hardcore.
My friend wants to know.
No, I personally don't think so.
Okay, good.
As long as it's a consenting box.
In the Greek language, there were different words for different kinds of love, and that's kind of what I'm getting at in the definition.
Boy love.
the
Yes.
agape.
Yes.
In the Greco-Roman world, there's no
Yes.
doubt about it.
The eros is the erotic.
Eros, would be an erotic love.
So that would be like, the good one. And
But
then,
see, I
Pizza box.
have an old
That's pizza love.
I have an old male friend that's in his 70s, and I love the guy. I really do. I care a great deal about this guy. So that's also a love. I really do. If something happened to him, it would hurt me. If he needs something, I want to help him. That's love. But there's different levels, and there's different ways of describing those feelings. But they're feelings. They're feelings. If I love
They're
pizza,
nothing more than feelings. Feelings.
we're gonna sing.
man,
But Boston said it's more than a feeling. I just want
It's
to
more than a
point that
feeling.
out.
Yeah.
in very high falsetto-y ways. So that must make it true.
And I've always wondered how Boston knew about my affection for this pizza box.
Now the real question, I guess, would be what love does for a believer.
What's
What
love got to do with it?
love does God have for His creation? Does He
yeah.
love us enough to
Maybe it's
help us, but not
No.
love us enough to keep starving children from
No, he certainly
getting
doesn't.
food?
Right.
And then when we get to heaven, it's going to be more the eros type of love because we are the bride of Christ. I'm sorry, they are the bride of Christ.
right.
Oh, sorry, you said it.
Dang.
You're a Christian.
Well, now because
He's done it now.
I was saved though, so because according to the Christian religion, there is no way.
Well, no.
If you-
apart from
back that up.
Back that up. Backtrack. Yeah.
apart from
According to certain sects of Christianity.
Right. If
Yeah.
Some of them believe
if you were a
in
Baptist
immortality.
and if you were really saved.
right,
But
so
one
then
of the-
I
one of
wasn't
the-
truly saved.
Right. One of the things that I heard one time was that one of the biggest tools that Satan uses is convincing people that they're saved.
Ooh,
It's
well, man,
innocuous. But
that's. I mean, it felt really real to me when I was 12,
yeah.
but so did deconversion. That's
You-
just how it felt anyway.
Well, yeah. I mean,
I understand.
I get the same feeling from whenever I'm reading a book.
Or good fart.
It's
It's a life
a
changing
real.
event.
I mean, that's one of those where you feel lighter after. But no. I mean, from reading a book, when I'm reading a book, usually a scientific book because I don't really read fiction anymore since I stopped reading the Bible. But
I get it.
you see what I did there?
I did it.
But whenever I'm reading something and I start making connections in the information that I'm reading, like if it's something about physics or neuroscience or whatever,
And it gets good to you.
it is. I have that, what I would have used to call that religious experience of just that understanding, that aha moment, that epiphany. And that's really what it is, what you're having. You're having that, whoa, and you want to tell everybody about it.
It's a brand new world.
Yeah, it is, and I have those, and they're more profound because they're more lasting. I don't have to go to church to have it reaffirmed. It's reaffirmed every day just through science and understanding of the world that I live in. So there's no revival for me.
The lust for knowledge.
It is, and it feeds on itself.
Absolutely.
But yeah, it felt real when I went to church. It felt real whenever I had that religious experience, and when I started to understand what makes us experience the things that we experience in and of itself, I started to understand that a little bit more, and it explained it better than there's a God inside my heart, which has no cognitive ability.
yeah.
It would
at
also
all.
probably clog your heart and give you a heart attack.
Right.
Yeah, it would, that's why Christians mostly die of heart failure. There's too much Jesus in there.
I think we want to answer a question.
Well,
but we
Brandon,
just start to wrap this up.
Brandon threw this out there. He said, "What's wrong with the Bible having specific terms for different types of love?"
Nothing.
Yeah.
That's what I would think. Nothing.
Nothing, because the Bible has a bunch of stuff in there that's not true. James Harmon says, if the Bible is a book of answers, does it answer the problem of suffering?
Short answer, no.
First of all, the
that-
Bible isn't a book of answers.
He's just imagining if it is.
If it is, does it?
Well, I think that throughout the writings of the Bible, it has attempted to answer the question of suffering, and it answered it in different ways. The earliest view that I'm aware of in biblical writings will be what they call Deuteronomistic theology. And the Deuteronomistic theology is really basically simple, and it is that if this was long before they had the idea of Satan being the bad guy, but in the Hebrew philosophy, in the middle of the first millennium BCE, Deuteronomistic theology is what stood behind the older writings in the Bible. And they believed that if you were faithful to God, and you, of course, to them it would be followed his laws that he laid down for you, then you would be successful. If you were not faithful, or if you rebelled against God, then you would be punished, or you would suffer. And that was their explanation. That's the Deuteronomistic theology, is suffering came from rebellion. Now, what's interesting is that the book of Job attempts to deal with that. And Job finally finds out that suffering doesn't have anything to do with whether you're faithful, because he was faithful. I mean, God, in the beginning of the book of Job, even says that he's his faithful servant, and yet he suffers. So to me, it's a cultural thing. At that time, they were trying to figure out whether this Deuteronomistic theology was correct. You go to Ecclesiastes, and it shoots it down again. I think the New Testament writings, I think most of what the Bible is trying to do is trying to discuss and rationalize the human experience, and part of that is why we suffer. Now, whether they do it successfully or not, I don't see any of those answers as being legitimate. The New Testament would tend to be more of a dualistic view in which Satan was in control of the world, and that God had given that control over to Satan, and so we suffer because Satan wants to torment us. Satan wants to draw us all away from God. But you have to believe the presupposition for that to work. And the reality is, I think there's good and bad in each of us. But of course, my opinion doesn't mean anything. But I believe that each of us have a capacity for great good and for great bad. And our social environment affects us and turns us and twists us and molds us. And sometimes we come out good, and sometimes we come out bad. Sometimes we think we're good, and we're not. I'm sure Hitler thought he was a hell of a guy.
Quick question for you, Larry. When was the book of Revelation written? Was it 95 CE? Question came in for you.
Yeah, well, I don't know if anybody can put their finger on exactly when the book was written, but my understanding, the majority opinion in New Testament studies, is that it was written right at the end of the first century, 95, 96. I think most of the scholars that I'm familiar with would say that it was referencing the Emperor Domitian, who was, well, I'd be afraid to even guess.
He's a Roman emperor.
Yeah,
correct?
yeah.
And that's where the numerology of his name, the three score, threesome, and...
Yeah, some people say it was Nero, some people say it was Domitian. I try not to say it was either, other than...
It was just a ruler at the time.
Roughly the end of the first century AD.
Yeah, I think that there's some that believe that it was written earlier than that, that it was written during the period of Nero, but the author was trying to give the impression that it was being written during the time of Nero, and that's common with apocalyptic literature, and so that's why I believe that the predominant view would be that it was written right there, 95, 96, right there at the end of the first century. But now I'm not going to say that I know when it was written, because I don't.
It's a very nebulous. I think a lot of the books of the Bible are pretty nebulous about when they were specifically written, especially, I guess, when you would go back into the further stuff of the Old Testament. I would think it would get harder to nail down.
Anything in antiquity.
Yeah.
Unless they actually gave you a time frame when they say, this is going on right now.
Right.
Here's the person that's ruling. And a lot of times, especially in apocalyptic literature, when they're saying this is going on right now, it's actually stuff that happened 20 years earlier or 100 years earlier, like the book of Daniel. The book is set up to appear to have been written by Daniel, who was supposed to have lived in the 7th century.
And that's to make him look like a prophetic genius.
But every biblical scholar that I'm aware of that's worth his weight can say that Daniel is one of the few books that they can nail down to the year when it was written.
Wow.
And that would be the last year of Antiochus Epiphanes' life.
All right. Well, I think we're gonna wrap this one up. We've been going for a while now.
Well, we actually
sort
did
of.
2. We actually did 2. Like I said, this is going to be
done 2 tonight,
GTF overtime. So
GTF
Late night.
So
Late night.
log on for that. We'll have it up on the YouTubes and all that kind of stuff later. So thanks for watching, listening, everybody. We appreciate it. We'll see you next time on GTFO Live. And thanks, Eccentric, for being here.
Thank you.
Thank you guys for having me.
thank you.